Hello, hello. Welcome back to Peak Northwest, an outdoors and travel podcast by the Oregonian and Oregon Live, dedicated to the adventure and exploration of our beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'm Jamie Hale.
And I'm Vicki Connor. Together, we take you to some of the most beautiful and interesting destinations in our region, discussing where to go, what to do, and places to see. And today, we're headed just south of Portland for a beautiful spring day trip to Oregon City.
Vicki, I have to say, I adore Oregon City. This is one of my favorite quick day trip destinations from Portland. It has so many restaurants, trails, sights to see. I feel like every time I'm going there, I'm always discovering something new, and it's always drawing me back to see something a little bit more.
I will have to admit, I haven't visited Oregon City, but I've heard some really great things. So I'm excited to learn more and see what are the big highlights for you when you go there.
Oh man, I've got some highlights. I feel like I went there again last week. It was a beautiful spring day, blue sky, chilly air but warm enough. The flowers were all blooming, and I was like, I've got to get back there. I had previously been to Oregon City, pretty often. I had seen a mechanic, taken my car to a mechanic in Oregon City for a number of years, and people were always like, "Why don't you see a mechanic in Portland?" I was like, well, because I get an excuse to go to Oregon City. And so I'd take my car into the shop and, maybe do a little work at a cafe, or if it was on a weekend, I'd just like walk around town, see some stuff, go to some parks, eat at some restaurants, find all the good lunch places. It's just like a great excuse to explore this little town where there seemed to be so much to see.
How far of a drive is it from Portland to Oregon City?
Like a lot of places, depends on traffic. About 30 minutes, give or take, been my experience. There's a lot of construction on 205 right now that makes it a little bit more complicated. Depends on which part of Portland you're coming from, but about 30 minutes, which to me feels like you're getting out of Portland technically, but it's not like you're driving all the way to Mount Hood or to Hood River, right? You're getting out, but it's just barely. So Oregon City is, like I said, just about 30 minutes south of Portland. It's located kind of at the intersection of the Willamette and Clackamas rivers. This is right there where Willamette Falls is. So the really spectacular waterfall on the Willamette River has been a meeting place, a fishing place since time immemorial. More recently has been the site of a paper mill, hydroelectric powerhouses, and soon will be more community gathering places as various tribal projects are working to tear down some of those old defunct buildings and build new ones of their own. So Oregon City is going to really drastically transform in the next decade or two. But for right now, it's still a really, really great place to see, even without all of that. So I think it's sort of eventually will be this embarrassment of riches for that town.
How would you describe like the vibe of Oregon City?
Yeah, it's got a small town vibe, but it is still so close to Portland. So I feel like I can sum it up this way. I was in a cafe and I heard a couple of guys, real just dudes, talking about their upcoming weekend hunting trip over oat milk chai lattes. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like a good mix of things in Oregon City.
Exactly. It's its own thing. It's definitely like outside the city, but not that far outside the city. Portland's influence is still very clear on Oregon City, but they do their own thing very much. So you're going to have restaurants that like with Portland ties that are there and that are popular, and more people are going to be eating at like, the old school pub with their like, pastrami Tuesdays or whatever. That's not real. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like it's got more of that sort of small town community vibe.
I see. So you went on a Thursday. What's it like a Thursday in Oregon City? Where do you start off?
Every time I go to Oregon City, I start in the historic downtown. That's where I like to start the day. It's got its Main Street is very cute, very charming. It's just a little historic downtown. They have a lot of little shops, restaurants, cafes, that sort of thing. I love this cafe called Black Ink Coffee. So I started off there. And this is like a real Portland snob cafe. They're pouring, stuff from Dead Stock, right? They're pouring some stuff from Stumptown, from Proud Mary. Really good beans, great stuff. I thought the pastries were just okay, but it was a really good place to sit, have a macchiato, start the day. It's inside of like a bookshop, gift shop. So it's got this really interesting kind of vibe, almost sort of like the Powell's on Hawthorne, right? You've got this coffee shop inside of a bookshop. And it's just a really nice place to spend the morning. Big open windows with lots of light coming through. So I started off there, had my coffee, my pastry, and I walked a couple blocks from the coffee shop and took the Oregon City Municipal Elevator up to the bluff over town. And I feel like maybe I need to do some explaining about this. So I saw your face here, and you looked a little confused.
I'm imagining just this like special elevator, almost like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory style. That's outdoors somewhere.
I mean, basically, yes. So downtown Oregon City is kind of like on river level. A lot of the other part of town is up on this bluff that is over top of all of that. So in order to get from downtown up on top of the bluff, there is an elevator that takes you up. Originally, they had this like hydraulic elevator. We had to go up and then walk this 35-foot catwalk across the railroad tracks over top of it to get over to the bluff. And eventually they decided that was a bad idea. They built a tunnel underneath the tracks and then built this new elevator in like the 1950s. It's like a 1-story elevator, 130 feet tall. It's free. It's a pedestrian access point. You just walk right up, hit the button, go up, and you're there. It's very convenient. It's not like a super common way to like get up. There's also a really charming stairway if you're into the stairs, which sometimes I am. So a lot of ways to get up there. But this elevator, it's so cool. You just have to do it. You have to try it out.
Very cool. Is there like an attendant there or anything, or it's just a simple elevator?
It's a simple elevator, but at the top, there is somebody up there at the top who sits at a little information booth a lot of the times who will tell you about the history. The woman up there at the time, when I was there on Thursday, we struck up a conversation. She told me all about the history. She showed me the pictures and all the stuff. It was very helpful, very informative. So I love to do this every time I go. Start at downtown, get some coffee, go up the elevator. And then my next like sort of thing I do is walk the McLaughlin Promenade. McLaughlin Promenade is this like mile-long pathway that runs along the edge of the bluff. There's like this little beautiful stone railing, sort of like WPA era stonework, and some benches and some gardens and some green spaces and all kinds of beautiful stuff. And from here, you get a good view of Willamette Falls from over top. So it gives you river views over the city, and it's just like this beautiful green space to walk around on. I love it.
That sounds like, yeah, the perfect place to just have your coffee and, have a relaxing little morning.
Exactly. So I should back up, though. Before I did the McLaughlin Promenade, I always do this. I take like a coffee and lunch and go up to the promenade and sit for a while. But this time, I kind of just had that Danish at the coffee shop, and I was like, I need something else to eat. I'm going to be walking around all day. What am I doing to myself? So I had done a little research, and there's this restaurant called the Hive Social that is up on the bluff. Great name, very fun. So like 2 blocks from the elevator, I walked and got to this restaurant. They're open like 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. So they do brunch, lunch, and dinner. There's a cafe attached. They do catering. They do everything. I looked at their menu, and they had like a lot of really kind of expensive brunch options, like Benedict's and big plates that were like $15, $18. And I just didn't need all that food. I just needed something. So I like a millennial. I got an avocado toast with a couple of over easy eggs on top. And it was honestly so good. It was really, really good. And a surprisingly tall glass of grapefruit juice. When you get, this is a tangent here, but when you go to a restaurant or a breakfast place, you get a juice and it's like a tiny little juice cup, like you're a toddler or something.
They always ask, do you want a small or a large? And like me, my immediate answer is always like small. And then it comes out in like a shot glass and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? I'm going to drink it in one sip before my food comes out.
Large is like a pint glass and you're like, this is too much. But it was like just a perfect size of juice. And I was really delighted by that small detail. But I loaded up at the Hive Social and then I took off down the promenade.
Yeah.
Gorgeous day. The flowers were blooming. The sky was blue. There weren't that many people out there. It was like me and a few old people walking. Um, got some really great views of the waterfall. And at the end of the promenade, you cross this pedestrian bridge over the highway and walk down. And there's alongside of the highway a viewpoint for Willamette Falls. So this is
Oh,
about the
wow.
closest you can get to the waterfall without being on a boat at this point.
Okay.
And again, those tribal projects, when they come to fruition, should have closer access to the waterfall. I've been in some of that construction area, and boy, it does look good. It looks really, really nice when you're up close. So this viewpoint does not do it justice, I have to say. But it still is a good waterfall viewpoint. It's worth stopping, checking out, taking a look. So I got a good look at the waterfall. And then right across the street is this Museum of the Oregon Territory, little local history museum. It had like 5 minutes earlier just opened for the day. And so I said, hey, let's check it out. I know a little bit about the history of Oregon City, but I don't know everything. So maybe I can go educate myself.
That's cool. Is it just like a really tiny spot? What does it look like from the outside that caught your eye?
It's like a bigger building. It's a cool building. It houses some other stuff I'm not totally clear on, but one floor of the building is this like self-guided museum. A bunch of exhibits, sort of runs like from indigenous history to the industrial era to modern day. There's a very long video all about the history of Oregon City. You can just sit and get the whole thing via video. There's like this old pharmacy section where you can get a look at like some old medicines. I thought that was pretty interesting. It didn't take me long. I think I spent 20-30 minutes in there and I was done. But it's sort of a good way to dip your toes into Oregon City's history.
Any really interesting facts that you learned, Jamie?
Again, I know a little bit about this already, so not a ton. Actually, you know what? No, I did learn something interesting. I did. There's a powerhouse, a hydroelectric powerhouse on Willamette Falls that apparently was the first long distance hydroelectric project in the world.
What?
So some engineers built this powerhouse at Willamette Falls and then took that power to Portland. And that's like how Portland had its like first major source of power, of electricity.
Whoa.
So yeah, that was something that people hadn't thought about doing before, taking hydroelectric power over long distances. And that was first happened in Oregon City.
That is a pretty cool fact. Okay, so you enjoyed this museum, small museum. At this point, has enough time passed? Have you done enough stuff that you're like, all right, my next meal is coming up?
For me, enough time had passed. I'll say I had worked up another appetite at this point because I walked down the promenade, took all the pictures, walked around the museum, walked back down the promenade, back down the elevator, back downtown. I felt like I had done a lot of walking already. I felt like I could, and I had a lot planned for the afternoon. So I was like, not only have I done enough now, but I need to eat in order to like keep this up. I gotta keep this pace up. So I have checked out a lot of lunch places, like I said, in Oregon City. There's Ingrid Scandinavian. They do these lefse wraps that are really good. There's this place called Pho Thai that does like a really perfectly portioned lunch menu.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's Canard, the Oregon City out branch of the famous Portland restaurant that
Yes.
has all kinds of creative upscale options for lunch and dinner. A lot of really good options. But I was like really in the mood to try something new on this trip because it was kind of like I wanted to see the old stuff I liked, but I wanted to try some new things too. So I went to this new food cart pod that opened a few years ago I had not been to, called Corner 14.
Mm-hmm.
Just across the street from Oregon City Brewing on the north end of downtown, and walked around. I saw some places doing Thai food, doing burgers, Mexican food. One place is doing Russian pierogi. But what really caught my eye was honestly this place called Veggie Bowl. I was like, tell me more, Veggie Bowl. And they had this bowl of just like rice and quinoa and vegetables and nori and some sort of special sauce. And I'm such a sucker for a special sauce. Like what's in it? I want to know. And it was so delicious. It was like not like a meal that like changed my life, but I did eat it and thought I could eat this every day. It was just like so satisfying and so simple that I could just eat it and eat it. And it really was like, and it felt really good. I think, especially when I'm doing like movement and walking, to have something light and nutritious as opposed to getting something fried. If I had a burger, I'm done. Like I'm not going to keep walking. But this really allowed me to sort of continue on my day.
Gotcha. This sounds like very much a Jamie Hale meal that
Oh yeah,
I'm living for this.
I did have a lot of new places and old favorites I wanted to see in the afternoon. So, like I said, Oregon City, it's on the Willamette and Clackamas rivers. If you go just across the Willamette River, you're in West Lynn. And I know
Okay.
this is technically not Oregon City, so Oregon City folks, forgive me and West Lynn folks, forgive me if I'm looping your places into Oregon City, but you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I crossed the river, got back in my car, drove across the river into West Lynn, and went to this place called Camassia Nature Preserve.
Hmm.
It's this little 26-acre natural area, kind of like in the middle of a neighborhood. It's like between a
Okay.
neighborhood and a high school over there. And it's run by the Nature Conservancy, which is an international conservation nonprofit that has land everywhere. But they manage this place and keep it as like this wildflower preserve in the spring. So it's like this natural habitat for camas lilies, for trilliums, for sea blush flowers, all kinds of stuff. It's a really short loop trail, takes you through the woods, out through these meadows, and back. And it's just a great spot for a walk, especially in the spring. I've not been there outside the spring. I'm sure it's still very beautiful and pretty, but when you go when in the sort of middle of spring like this, when the wildflowers are all popping, it's incredible. It's just a really, really nice place. So after Camassia, I was really interested in this place called Maddox Woods. Maddox Woods is a place that I know of primarily as a place where they do Christmas lights in the winter. It was like when I do those lists of like places to go see light shows, Maddox Woods is always like this really small local production. They do something. I've never been out there, but I was like, let me go check it out because I keep hearing about it. So I went there, and as the name suggests, it's sort of like a woodland area, and there are some trees, but really the highlight here is this viewing area on the Willamette River that looks across to a place called Goat Island. Goat Island is another misnomer. No goats. It's actually a place for roosting herons. So this is like a really good like heron watching spot, and they have like these heron watch parties and those kind of stuff there. So really, really tiny little park, primarily centered around river views and herons. Very cool. I found it very lovely. There's a picnic table there. I thought this would be a great spot to stop and have lunch if I hadn't just eaten at the food carts. A place just to kind of walk around and take a look. There was a trail that led into the woods from Maddox Woods, and I thought I got to explore that. What's this way? So I walked up. It's kind of it was a short, steep little hill. I walked into the woods, then crossed a bridge, and on the other side of the bridge was a place called Burnside Park. This is like a little neighborhood greenery area. There's like this appears to be the only like public access point into Burnside Park is through Maddox Woods. But the trail leads under these beautiful trees. It was, again, a gorgeous day. You can kind of see the river through the trees out there. And the trail kind of looped down and around to this shaded beach on the river. And I remember getting there and being like, it's like just enough sand to like spread out and find somewhere to sit. It wasn't like too rocky at this point in the year,
Mm-hmm.
and it was shaded, so it wasn't like super sunny. It was really peaceful.
Wow.
There was a boat launch across the water and a lot of motorboats going by, but ignore that noise, and it's a really peaceful little spot. And I was like, I could spend all day here. Should have
Yeah.
brought a book and a towel and laid out.
Yeah, right? Oh
You
my
know?
gosh. Did you have like binoculars? Did you do any bird watching or anything?
No, I didn't. I should have brought again. If I had known it was such a heron spot, I would have brought some binoculars and took a look for him.
For sure.
But just a really great spot. And while I thought I could spend all day there, I was like, I do have more to do. So I did take off. But at this point, it was the afternoon. It was again blue skies. It had warmed up a bit. The smell of like the blooming flowers was in the air. It was just like so nice, so idyllic.
For listeners, obviously, Jamie, you're thinking about what you're going to include in the story that you're going to write about your trip to Oregon City. At this point, are you like writing down what you're experiencing with the senses? Take us through that process a little bit.
I mean, I've got my notes app open all day that I'm taking notes in. It's one of those things where I take notes all day, and then I use like 2% of them in my story. Like I rely on the memory more than anything. I try to write it, quickly after I do this. I did this on a Thursday, and I wrote the story on Monday, and just try to rely on the pictures and the memory to sort of get this up. But I have a whole list of things. I'm trying to like make a guide to a day trip to Oregon City, so I can't linger on any one thing as much as I might want to. So when I go for myself, like I've spent hours like at the McLaughlin Promenade, just like leaning up against a tree and reading, napping. Like that was not this kind of day, but you can do that in any of these places if you want a more relaxing experience.
For sure. So you wrapped up at this spot, and then were you hungry again? What was next on the list?
I was like almost hungry again. There's the place I wanted to go is this place called Mi Famiglia Pizzeria. It's back in downtown Oregon City. They do wood fire pizza. It sounded good to me. They close from 3 to 5. They're open for lunch and open for dinner. And I was like, the time I really wanted to eat was like 4. So I just went at like, 2:45. I snuck in there right before they closed. I got a margarita pizza and just inhaled like half of it. I was surprised. I didn't think I was that hungry, but like, I think at this point I've done a lot of walking. I walked for several miles at this point. I'd been in the sun, so I was like super thirsty, and I was like, oh, I need to take a rest. This is actually a great idea to sit and eat and hydrate and just to give myself a break. Cause I had walked through those 3 parks at that point and the promenade and all of this stuff and all around town. So it was really, really good opportunity. The pizza was good. It was a bit cheesier than I usually get from margarita pizza, but the crust was excellent. The crust was perfect. So, and that to me, that's half the battle right there. So do recommend Mi Famiglia. It's again, right downtown Oregon City. It's a great location too.
You were eating well in Oregon City.
Yeah, you really can there.
Yeah, and that's probably that's like the big draw for me in any place. Like what food am I getting there? And it sounds like you had some good meals in Oregon City.
Yeah. And skipping places that I had been to before that I knew were good also. Like this was just a lot of new stuff, new territory for me, which was super exciting.
So you have your pizza. Where are you off to next?
Well, I had seen the Willamette River beaches in West Lynn, and along Willamette Falls. But I was really curious about the Clackamas River side of things. So on the north side of town, there is this paved pathway called the Clackamas River Trail, and there's a couple of access points to get there. And it's got like access to the Clackamas River, this little cove. So I was like, okay, some more riverside beaches or what? Let's go check it out. So I drove to a place called River Access Park. Super uncreative name, but I gotta give it kudos for being exactly what it is.
For sure.
I love that. And walked in the pathway. It wasn't my favorite. I'll say it off the bat. It wasn't my favorite spot. It did pass the wastewater treatment plant. There was for a couple minutes a real odor on the trail.
Yeah.
The river access points were a little funny. It's a bit of a rockier shore on this part of the Clackamas River. So you kind of just, bounce off the trail into a little sort of rocky riverside beach. Pretty shallow, the Clackamas there. There was this weird big structure at one of the river access points that I later learned was a pump station for Lake Oswego. It was like this 2-story structure that like rose out of the river. It was weird and wild. A strange kind of attraction for this little trail, but I made for some good pictures anyway. So I did this, checked out the riverside beaches and walked this little paved pathway. It runs like a mile end to end. And I think the thing about this Clackamas River Trail here is that it's better for bikes than it is for walking. Paved pathway, it really seemed designed for cyclists. I saw a number of cyclists on it who seemed to be having a great time. My feet were not really feeling that hard pavement. And there wasn't a lot of great scenery, at least as far as I was concerned, to jump out there and see. Not a lot of good beaches, not a lot of good space to hang out. It was very exposed and it was pretty sunny at that point. So I was feeling a bit like in the sun. There were a number of like picnic tables in the grass that seemed pretty nice if you're looking for that kind of thing. I was not at that moment, but I thought, again, a good place to have a picnic if I needed to. So, it's not all bad or anything. I think it's a perfectly fine spot, but I think I had intended on spending more time there. And when I got there, I said, oh no, this is not a place I want to spend more time at.
Yeah. Probably if you're on bike, you get through that little stinky part a little bit quicker too.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you have any other spots after this, or did this kind of wrap up your adventuring?
That pretty much wrapped up what I had on my list. There were a couple other spots like, there's this end of the Oregon Trail and Interpretive Center where there's this big museum. It's similar to the Oregon Territory Museum, but there's just so much more to do. It's like, they have, historical reenactors and they have, candle making and craft. It's like, it's designed for field trips, basically.
Yeah.
And I wasn't there on a field trip or with kids, so it wasn't like such a draw to me, but, I thought, and I didn't have the time, I think, either. So I kind of passed that aside and just took note of it. But I was looking for a little treat, just a little treat at the end of the day,
I was about to ask, where are we getting our sweet treat in Oregon City, Jamie?
I got a hot tip from one of our colleagues, Brad Schmidt, who lives in the area. And he said, you got to go to Mike's Drive-In. So Mike's Drive-In, they've got a few locations around the area, including one like right in the heart of Oregon City, up on the bluff. And he said the thing about Mike's Drive-In is they have ice cream cones, soft serve ice cream cones, for $1.49.
Whoa.
Like it's 1954 or something. $1.49.
Oh my gosh.
Insane. So I I went there. I got a vanilla strawberry swirl. Like, it wasn't just a tiny thing either. It was like it wasn't enormous, but it was like a substantial ice cream cone.
Yeah. Yeah.
With tip, that's $2. That's great.
That reminds me of the days when gas cost 99 cents a gallon.
I loved it. It was a great way to end the day. At that point, it was sort of like, evening was starting to set in.
Yeah.
Some clouds had rolled in, so it was getting chilly. I was eating ice cream and I was cold, and I thought like this might be a little early in the season for like riverside beaches and like eating ice cream cones.
Yeah.
But it was worth, I think, going in the spring to see all the flowers, the gardens, everything in bloom and so colorful. But I do feel like Oregon City is a great destination for like later in the spring and for summer. Being able to get down by the water, walk around downtown, eat these restaurants. A lot of places I described, Camassia, Maddox Woods, you can walk there from downtown Oregon City. It's not all on sidewalk, but like it is definitely walkable if you want to. Yeah. So you can make a whole day just walking place to place to place if you want to do that. I like the freedom of having a car and getting to different restaurants and things, but it was a great day. It was one of those ones where I just felt like so good and happy being out there.
Yeah.
One of those days where I'm like, God, this is my job today. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it was just filled with good food and time outside, which where you can't go wrong with that. I will say I have one more recommendation for you, even though I haven't been to Oregon City. There's this one bakery there that has been at different markets that I've visited. But they actually have like a brick and mortar shop in Oregon City, and it's called Small Baking Co. or Small Baking Company.
Okay.
And they were at like some holiday market. So I think what I specifically had was like a peppermint brownie and some type of gingerbread cake with a buttercream frosting. I think if those products that I had there, those baked goods, speak for the rest of what they serve, oh my gosh. This might be one of my favorite bakeries of all time. Not to just go on and on about it, but So good. I feel like everything was just perfectly moist on the inside, and that's what I love about a baked good. So, highly recommend Small Baking Company.
I love that. I was just looking at the pictures online. Those pastries and cookies they have look awesome.
Yeah. Fudge brownie. Gotta get it.
Okay, got to go back. That's the thing. I got to go back and do something else.
There you go.
Always something new in Oregon City. And again, so close. It's you don't have to do everything in one day. Do nearly as many things as I did one day. If I went back on my own, like I said, I would chill more, relax a little bit. But there's just so much to see and do there. I'm constantly impressed and shocked that this little town outside Portland has all this beauty and all this wonderful stuff. And once those Willamette Falls projects are finished in, I don't know, a decade or something, it's going to be a whole different thing, a whole new ballgame out there. That's going to draw a lot of people just to those two places alone. So, prepare to hear more about Oregon City in the future.
I love it. I got to make my way there.
Folks, that will wrap things up for us today. Until next time, you can watch our videos on the Oregonians YouTube channel and view all of our travel and outdoors coverage on OregonLive.com/travel, as well as HereIsOregon.com.
Please leave us a rating or review if you enjoyed the show. And if you want to support this podcast as well as our local journalism, please consider a subscription to Oregon Live. You can find details at OregonLive.com/pod support. Also, if you're a fan of the show and you're interested in potentially sponsoring it, you can get in touch with our marketing people at advertise@oregonian.com. This episode of the show was produced by me, Vicki Connor, alongside Jamie Hale.
Stay safe and happy travels, everyone. Until next time, we leave you with this 10 seconds of Zen.